All right. Hi,
Hello.
Chris. Great to see you. Thanks so much for chatting. I'm very excited to talk about your book. Before we get into it, do you want to do a quick intro of yourself?
Yeah, so hey, Alana, thank you for the invite. Good to be here. Um, yes, so quick intro. I'm Harris. I live here in Amsterdam and the managing partner at Revenue Wizards. We are revenue operation consulting company, or I would like to call it operators here in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And yeah, RevOps is still growing in Europe, so we are trying to represent it more here in Europe.
So, my understanding of the reason that you wrote the book is this very thing. You're trying to give people a better sense of what RevOps is and what alignment is. And you are the leading RevOps agency in Europe, specifically also because it's not yet gotten very big there. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. So, and RevOps, yeah, it's I think often misunderstood, and sometimes you also see that some people define it and somebody else, and then we have all the different definition. And with the book, it was also a goal really to get different views together, doing research and putting it in writing as a really a manual for people who work in warehouse, but also for people who are really new to the field that they can try to understand it and see how they can benefit from it.
Yeah, and you wrote it in your third language, which is very impressive.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm very happy that I had Laura, my editor, and without her, this book would not be here.
Okay, I mean, I have many questions about the book. I want to start by talking about the fictional scenario you describe near the end of your book. I thought it was set up so well. You basically talk about this company, Umbrella AI, an AI-powered SaaS company in 2030, where they have Samantha, an account manager, and this is the first time that an account manager is actually managing a team of employees, the employees being these eight AI assistants under their belt. One assistant is a cold calling agent, another assistant is a client-facing one and a bridge to product teams and their AI assistants. So I'm curious, in this future vision of 2030, where AI is orchestrating alignment between revenue teams, what role will the RevOps team play?
Yeah, I think in such a world, there needs to be an architect who sets up the environment in the back end, right? So that's where I see the RevOps moving when I talk to RevOps team a lot. The more advanced one, right? There are so many companies, they are not here yet, but let's say the more advanced one, they are working on how to bring AI within the company further. They are like AI councils, AI strategy teams who are trying to develop all of these different AI use cases. And RevOps is in a really good position because revenue operation is supporting sales, marketing, CS, has usually the tools oversight and manages the processes. And they know, yeah, they know the company, especially a convergent engine, the best. And then, okay, they know where to plug in AI. So for Ramos folks at the moment, it's okay, getting new skills, everything in the AI domain, but then they are best positioned to apply those skills because they understand the business so well.
Okay, and this is kind of the role that RevOps is already playing. It's just more that AI and automation systems will be so good that they'll be architecting the systems, but they won't necessarily be maintaining it themselves.
Yeah, I think again, somebody needs to set up those AI system and there may need to be updates. So maybe the product changes, maybe there are new data that need to be fed, and then maybe always something breaks. Somebody needs to maintain things. So there, I think the role of RevOps. I don't believe that by that time we're gonna have an RevOps AI agent that does the job that the RevOps person does. It's a bit too versatile for that. AI is still the best when we have like niche applications like find me prospects, right? We know exactly what to do. Write me content pieces, and AI knows exactly what to do. And even doing this call calls, right? There are AIs who can already do it. And let's say in 5 years, this technology is going to be way more advanced. I always say, I think 11th November, that's 3 years ago, it's where ChatGPT was publicly available. If you see how far we got in 3 years, it's kind of wild.
Yeah, something tangent from the RevOps conversation, but something that a medicine friend told me was that they learned in their medicine course that we as humans cannot grasp the idea of exponential growth. And what we've seen
Yeah,
with GPT is this huge exponential curve that we just can't predict or map out. Okay,
exactly.
something you highlight in your book, which I haven't heard before, is this alignment, I haven't heard much of, is this alignment between RevOps and product teams. You talk about creating a bidirectional feedback loop between the client and the team. Can you talk more about what a good feedback system looks like? I actually was hoping that I wanted to get more into the product side of things with RevOps.
Yeah. So this especially applies for SaaS companies, right? They're RevOps organization who don't maybe have a software product, so really focusing on the SaaS products. And especially within those, the link is the most important, which when there's PLG, so product-led growth, or
Mhm.
self-service platforms, there especially the link to product is more important, but also for other ones, like for B2B enterprises. So, and having this good feedback loops is important because sometimes the most organization, how it goes is a customer has a problem. They may raise a case, then just an email to support. Support might not even know how to handle it, or just like because they might be just trained on support, so they don't even see the feature with it. Or it gets mentioned in a call with a salesperson or CS, and then an email was somewhere sent at some point, and then it maybe like at some point it eventually ends up on the product roadmap. But even that it got to this product roadmap, nobody on the nobody told the customer. Nobody, and then eventually it even gets released, and the customer maybe finds out in the release note if they release see that, or they just log in and they see it at some point, which might be the best case, but often they just get lost. So this is the current state, and improving from this state, I would say it's like it's rather easy, but not people are just not focusing that much to make it a priority because you can have good feedback loops. If you more processing, okay, the companies have a way the customer have way to submit feedback, how that feedback is being managed internally, that there's just a process to being assigning it to people, that there are like update flows, with what time do we need to update the customer? Amazing. And now there's even self-service platforms, right? Where customers, some modern PLG companies, I see that you can log in. There's usually then a section suggests your ideas. People can suggest them. There's upvoting, downvoting them. There can be discussion. The product managers are directly involved, have this one-on-one conversation with the customers and users. So this is great. This is like the top-notch, new build, new rising stars companies that I see applying this. But the thing, many legacy, not legacy, maybe a right word, but many more mature SaaS organization can actually also benefit that because everyone is saying, let's talk more to the customers, but not everyone is doing it. Or they're doing it, but in a less efficient way.
Okay, I have a couple things that come to mind when you say that. The first one is
Yeah.
that it sounds like on a in a product-led growth motion, there's less of an emphasis on the CSM team because the CSM team is typically dealing with post-sale handoff. And what it sounds like you're saying is that these newer companies have product teams that kind of deal with all of those CSM problems. And then the second question that I had, no, you don't agree with that. Okay, say more.
Partly. It's more nuance, but I will come to that. Or you want to talk about this first before going to the second question, or?
The second question I think is kind of combined, which is
Yeah.
that the way you're talking about this feedback loop between the product team and RevOps, it feels like right now, in the same way that I was just saying, the opposite. A lot of times RevOps teams rely on CSM for that kind of product feedback, but that product feedback then isn't getting put back into the product itself. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so I think there are two parts. So it's often like a combination of both, because if you look at software like Jira or Confluence, like a ticketing, they usually have them all self-service. You can sign up, or I don't know. Eventually, your company reaches a certain size, let's say 50 or 100 users. Bam, automatically you get now a CSM assigned because now you're becoming a more strategic account. So there's
Mm,
often this gap, this jump from PLG, self-service, and then all of that stuff still is being supported, right? That we see this user, this feedback boards, etc., this good loop. But eventually the size is becoming higher, and then okay, this small companies, we are getting now 40,000 ARR from them. Okay, let's put an account manager. Maybe we can work with them. Maybe let's deliver more value. Maybe they're going to buy even more product. So at some point, there's always this gap, this transition from PLG to maybe account management. Eventually, a contract, if it's 400,000 US dollars, people expect at that moment to have a human connection. That's often you see also in these pricing models that
yeah.
from a more enterprise, etc. Now you have customer success access. So I think they can work hand in hand.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And I think it must be a little bit interesting to be a customer who is going from a self-serve function to suddenly being assigned an account manager and then being kind of escalated in that way. But it sounds like that's more specific to enterprise teams that are larger. Like if you are a self-serve enterprise user, you might be strategically assigned an account manager down the line.
Exactly. I think it usually is a trigger is the ARR, how much you purchase from a company. Because yeah, if you have 1 million ARR or like sorry, 1,000 US dollars is your contract per year, then having a customer success manager supporting you, it's like not really affordable for many companies.
Yeah,
So
that
there needs to be a good self-service.
To take a step back between
Yeah.
the product feedback loop and being having the RevOps team involved, what do you think are the main issues right now to actually implementing that?
Um, I think sometimes like very simple things of resources, most teams that are understaffed, and then like what is the priority of doing things? And sometimes, often, the new business side is more prioritized over the customer success and just retaining customers, which then
Mhm.
goes into product. So sometimes it's as simple as priority setting, and I think that's the main point because technically pulling that off is like not as complex. But if you have a limited budget and then marketing wants money to get more leads, and the CEO has to decide more leads for marketing, more money business, or some feedback down the loop. And
Mm,
making the sell for the feedback topic, it's hard, but then the counter argument might be just, yeah, but we already talked to our customers. Why do we need to have such a feedback loop? So many see it as a nice to have activity, and there it's more than like a conversation to highlighting the importance of that. I think that's really what's holding companies back.
I see. And okay, my understanding is that the CRO tenure typically is pretty short. It's like 18 months, you're coming in, you have to make a bunch of changes immediately. So even though retention and the non-new business arm, the retaining customers arm is probably the most important to RevOps. It's just simply not the focus when the goal is to increase ROI in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's definitely a case. Often even chief revenue officer have the title chief revenue officers, but when you dig in, you actually notice the main priority is sales, sometimes marketing and CS. It's just like it's there, but usually there's a head of CS or VP of CS who will then manage CS
Hmm.
more really on their own. So I hardly see a chief revenue officer who really has a good overview of everything. It's just a lot as well. If you think about it, managing marketing, managing sales, and CS actively, very hard.
This, I think, gets very much to the meat of your book, which is this pendulum metaphor. And my
Yeah.
understanding is that the pendulum metaphor came out of one of your designers seeing the Newton pendulum and being like, oh, this is exactly the type of metaphor that we want to use. What was the structure of the book before you landed on that metaphor?
Um, I would not say it did not have the structure, but it did have the structure. So the original structure was really just like, I know that the pillars, the four pillar process, I know there's like technology, systems, enablement. Great. I have four pillars. These are four chapters. I can write this down. That's how I started writing. Great. At some point, I will need an introduction. I will need an end. Let's keep that for the end. I know I need to have a link between finance and between RevOps. Great. Let's put something there. Or I need to talk about change management. Okay, let's put that in the
Mhm.
beginning where we set the stage of RevOps. And then, yeah, AI. Obviously, we cannot write the book now about without AI because it changed the game. So I had this building block, but then we needed something to link it.
Yeah.
And because we did not, also I did not have the title until the last 3, 4 months of publishing the book. There were some titles, but they were like just working titles.
Mhm.
So with this idea of the pendulum, everything came together. So, and I'm like, at that point, I was like 2 years and longer in the consulting business, and I struggled all the time to get a good metaphor for it. And then, yeah, then it's needed an outsider, like the designer who has just a more creative mind, I guess, and who just gets his inspiration while being in a toy market and just sees that. And then bam, everything makes sense. Like I guess that's a creative process. You cannot make it happen. It just happens on its own. And I guess that's how it happened here.
So the four pillars of RevOps, enablement, process, systems, data, and insights. These are the things that have to be in alignment. How do these four pillars map onto a revenue team? Is it one to one, or is a revenue team, a cross-functional revenue team, responsible for all of these pillars equally?
Yeah, I think those pillars are like, let's call them a North Star metrics. Like this is what we want to keep in mind and get there. And if you start the DevOps team from scratch, like great, model it after this. I got feedback from a few people. Hey, we implemented DevOps and we followed your structure. Amazing. Cool. Like because when you start from scratch, it's easier. You can start with a
Mhm.
good form. But many companies, if you have 500 employees and you already have existing department and you want to introduce RevOps, well, you cannot restructure it exactly like this. Some can, but that's a project might take years or two to get there. And so, but keeping that in mind, they can say, all right, we're having an enablement team. It's already there. Our systems are kind of managed a little bit by IT, fine, which is also okay. We can introduce RevOps as really focusing on the process side, working on the data and with the system to really work on those alignment topics. And then the RevOps team is really then this coordinating, or like how I like to call like the strategic go-to-market business partner
Mhm.
for the organization, and then following these principles, but not necessarily having these labels for those different departments. They might call it commercial excellence. They might call it something else. But if they understand, okay, this is still RevOps, what we are doing, and we are working with the different teams or building blocks, then we can get there. Because the building blocks, they exist in most companies in some way or another, but they may not follow the same methodology. And RevOps is then this methodology that applies to all of those teams. And wow, now we are going in one direction.
So RevOps has a framework essentially that they need to implement. Have
Yeah.
Have you worked with consulting clients where they are coming to you? They have, a half-baked RevOps team set up, they have all these structures in place, and instead of implementing it themselves, like they are working directly with you to set up all these systems from the get-go?
Yeah, definitely. So we different have different engagement with customers. Sometimes some need guidance. Hey, we want to go on this RevOps journey and let's start together from scratch. Sometimes they hire people internally and hey, we need extra hand to get it there, some guidance. Some people just literally have a whole RevOps team and then they might just need we lack some skills here, we need support here, etc. So companies are on different journeys and then everyone needs some different level of assistance. Yeah.
Do you find that there's one pillar in specific that most companies overlook, or is there not really a trend?
Um, I do believe enablement is
Mm,
something a little bit sadly overlooked. I think people understand, well, sometimes people understand technology is important, and but then some still need to understand process comes before technology.
mm,
Some companies say they have a data problem, what they often hear, but actually they have a process problem because the bad processes feed bad data. So
mm.
yeah, no surprise you have bad data because your processes do not support an environment where you can have good data. And why enablement is so important is even if you have basic processes, like some companies have some form of process, but if people are not enabled to follow that, if people don't know what to do, if people can have their own things and do it their own way, as long as they deliver some results, well, it works till they deliver these results, but eventually they don't deliver results. And then, yeah, who to blame? So people need to really understand the key processes. They need to be enabled to do them, and then you can see progress, right? But most people neglect the enablement piece and tell them send a Loom video. Maybe there's a 1 hour session, and now you voila, off you go, deliver results, and that's sadly not how reality works.
Okay, that's interesting because in one of the podcasts you on, I think you'd mentioned that, you interviewed 180 RevOps leaders for your
Yeah.
book. And one of the most interesting insights you found was that a lot of RevOps is really just sales ops in drag, if I remember correctly. Sales ops to me speaks mainly to enablement. Or how would you classify RevOps teams that are really sales ops in drag? And what are RevOps teams that are doing RevOps doing differently?
Yeah, I do, well, with sales up, it's really then just to focus on sales per se, right? So how do we get to a good forecast? How are we the territories reassignment, some quota topics? Where RevOps is a little bit broader, like, okay, like to get to our forecasts, how can we maybe work with marketing together to improve that? And then down the line with customer success, really then looking at the more whole bow tie model, if you want to call it like that.
I think you had laid out the bow tie model as well in your book, and that bow tie model is coming from Jakku's Winning by Design. Can you go into that
Exactly.
a little bit and how you were thinking about adapting it?
Yeah, it's a great methodology because just to summarize for those who don't know the bow tie right model, you have in sales, business, marketing, we have the standard funnel where all the leads are coming from the top, we are prospecting and eventually closing them. And the bow tie is basically shifting it to the side and mirroring it to the other side. So we still have everything that comes in, but now we also look like of how we onboard them, how are we retaining them, and how maybe are they becoming advocates that they even bring us more customers. They talk great, so amazing brand. So and this is a great RevOps perspective as well, because it has a full view. And if we strategically look at this, great. So business is strategically aligned of that. But okay, how do we make this bow tie a reality that we have all of these improvements? Well, then you need to have RevOps new operations. Like with the RevOps mindset, we're gonna make the strategic decision of looking from front to the end and operational reality. And RevOps can be then this facilitator of the bow tie model.
It makes me think when I think about that pendulum structure that what that pendulum is hitting is that bow tie model. Like it's going back and forth on that specific piece that is being built.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I need to tell my designer to combine the bow tie with the pendulum. That could be actually quite cool.
What were some other really interesting insights that came out of your conversation with 180 RevOps leaders?
Um, I think AI, but many are not ready for AI. So there's a lot of upskilling happening. People understand that it's important, and people also worry. right? So AI might come after their job as well. And they were also worried that they might replace some of their coworkers because it can be very efficient. So there were also some worrying topics there. And but it's also the understanding it is what it is, right? So when there's a new technology that makes so much things more efficient, and if you do not adopt it and your competitors are adopting it, they're gonna be just way more efficient than you, and they're gonna basically put you out of business. So it's just like something that needs to happen.
So a lot of people, everyone is thinking about AI, but very few have yet transitioned into trying out their own workflows or thinking about adopting it in their companies.
I think it's getting more and more. I see companies having a few weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago, we had the RevOps meetup here in Amsterdam with various companies, and the theme was buy, build, or bust in
Mhm.
AI. And there was this MIT study a while ago that said 95 or 90% of AI projects fails. Not our experience, really. Um, there were many solutions, like things buying one-stop solutions, like let's say Gong, and many people said had great results, like great impact on the team. They literally could measure the win rate going up. So
Mm.
really great results. So and also the build phase using tools like N8N or Clade or Langtalk, like people building internal agents that can support with uh recommending case studies, with enrichment, with doing research. So they are very powerful use cases the companies are already doing and implementing, and everything like a little bit all these use cases that involve external data. They can
Mhm.
be, or just data in general, language, like anything, web scraping, amazing use cases. Creating content, amazing use cases. Enriching with data, research, great one. Also, like documentation, like if you use Loom, you can create now a video, and then
Mhm.
you have the button create a standard operating procedure, and it creates your guide with screenshot.
Mhm.
Then you just need to copy paste it and put it in Notion or Confluent. That used to take 50 minutes, and now it takes like 10 minutes, like including the video recording. Like it's just amazing. Like if you think of those little things, and they add up. So that's great.
Okay, so many questions around the build and
Yeah.
buy process, but the first thing that I wanted to say is that I've read some studies where, you have these RevOps teams setting up complex workflows, and the problem is that it's not actually hitting ROI. That feels wrong to me. It's just such a clear productivity boost that it more feels like as you think about setting up these systems, whether it's build or buy, you need to be thinking about different KPIs to be measuring. And you're not going to see ROI if you're stuck looking at the same KPIs.
Yeah, exactly. I think on the business side, I think you can have two use cases. Chief Revenue Officer, sales, commercial, or what they are interesting is, hey, with this tool, we gotta get 15% more pipeline. We're gonna close 5% more deal. This is the language you need to speak. We can measure that. Just implement a tool. Let's see what happens after half a year. Does it go down and low up? Easy to measure. You can do it. Most people do it, and they see a good result. On the operational
Mhm.
expenditure side, you go the other way. Hey, we tested this. This is gonna save us 3 FTEs.
Mm.
3 people we need to hire less. And then people are gonna, huh, now we are speaking. So put your language in more revenue and in less FTEs. So these two, just these two, like you don't need anything else fancy. It makes us 20% faster of doing that. No, you transfer it always in FTEs. That's the language
Mm.
executives speak, and in revenue. Like two KPIs, easy sell.
Have you worked on a project for a client where you've been building a custom workflow or GTM automation for them?
Um, well, it's depends how you say, define it. Like now we have a few AI projects happening, but at the same time, it's really where you draw the line. Do you mean now enrichment agents that enrich data from the internet? We did similar stuff since years already, right? Did we implement an AI BDR system, like it fully replace everything? No, we didn't, because I'm not fully convinced it works, and I would also not recommend fully a client, hey, automate all your outbound, automate everything. I don't think that's yet the way to go, but it's more still augmenting salespeople, BDRs, and that's where we are focusing more on.
When do you think, and I want, if you've had companies that have come to you and just asked you this consultation question, when would you recommend a company build something and orchestrate that layer themselves versus buy a in a box solution?
Um, we actually had also very companies who were really in a highly restricted financial industry where actually sometimes they build stuff because of regulations, etc. But then it actually turned out to having all of this compliant and updated. This also takes a lot of effort and maintenance. They had internal engineers managing things full time. So sometimes it can make sense, but also, and you, if you really want to customize till the end, then it may work well. But sometimes the beauty of like off the shelf software is as well that it works very reliably for these few use cases they are doing it. They sometimes tell you then this is the way how to do it, like
Mhm.
some restriction. But if those restrictions can get you to 95% where you want to go, okay, are this additional 5% that which you can create with your own customization really worth all the effort of building it? Like if you look at the solution, like let's say Gong again, for example, like it's a lot of work to do that yourself, right? So, or like building your own clay, like you would not do that or something like, but maybe using a tool like clay or N88, great. But it depends really on the decision how much maintenance you also want to do internally. And sometimes just following the best practices of some of those key solutions that exist since many years. They exist since many years for a reason because they're working quite well. So it makes sense to have like sometimes a build solution more
Yeah,
often.
you sometimes a build solution. I think one of the issues with the buy solution, although less so because the space is so oversaturated in RevOps, is the vendor lock-in issue. And that feels a little bit, it's a little bit easier to kind of attrish from, oh, the attrition rate is a little bit higher for these sales tools. You also, in your book, you have a software evaluation section, and you talk about how people make the mistake of using the Moscow criteria from 2000s when making purchasing decisions. It doesn't work anymore because people aren't buying software because of the features. The features are getting shipped too fast. I would love to expand on that as we think about the buy debate. Like, what is the difference between how software was sold then versus now? How is that changing again? If is there a different evaluation framework that you should be thinking about? I know you mentioned the serve framework for your own automations, but as you're thinking about buying things, do you have a framework in mind?
Yeah, I do believe it's still important to have mapping those requirements. I think it's still having functional requirements in there is important. And yeah, this capability in Moscow must have, I don't know, features are getting shipped faster. So that is true, especially for newer SaaS tools. But if you, for example, gonna go for something old school like an ERP system, actually Moscow still might have make sense there because that category is not moving that fast. But I think with more newer software solution, I think there, like they can develop so fast. We also really see features are getting shipped faster. So it's more okay. Do you believe almost in the vision of this company? And
Right.
can you get there? Is what is the T behind? A lot of those AI tools nowadays, like Clay, people believe in Clay. people believe in N8N, they believe in tools like LangDoc and N8N. They sound like, oh, okay, what they're doing is cool. I see where they are going and they're shipping so fast. Yes, it doesn't fulfill all of our needs now, but let's get there. Especially for all of these newer use cases, because companies even they're not fully aware of their own requirements. Right? If you have a very established process, again, like an ERP solution, like a finance system, it is really black and white. You need to be compliant, you need to have this and that. Great. But anything more, especially in the sales and commercial organizations, like you always want to experiment with what can get you more sales. So I think, and there it's more like, wow, this is a great product. I never thought of it. Like, I don't need to have Moscow criteria. This is exactly what I need. So that's what I meant actually.
That's a really interesting point because I heard almost the opposite from someone recently where they were saying
Oh
that
yeah.
well, maybe not the opposite, but they were saying that several years ago it was a lot easier to get to get buyers interested in the vision of a product. But now
Hmm.
we're in this phase where buyers are more skeptical and they need more proof. And, obviously it's a lot easier to do their homework on things. So I'm curious. I mean, you're obviously talking to CROs who are in a buyer mindset. So maybe a little bit less skeptical on things like that. I'm curious how you've seen this.
Um, I think it can also definitely relate with tighter budgets, right? So then obviously then the evaluation criteria are stricter and tougher what you want to buy and not. I think that, and it's also the stage of the company, right? If you're more mature, you're probably a bit more reluctant. You need more proof of concept. But again, there you still, especially on the AI tools, you're still looking at, okay, this is new. We do not have many reference points. Like many people don't know, like there's so many tools that are like AI agent platforms, all of this automation platform. There's no reference platform. Like, how can you even create really a requirement document because you have not really a reference point? So I think it depends. It's not a black and white decision.
A reference platform. So that would be a completely different category in the RevOps, RevTech toolkit, it sounds like.
Sorry, I miss. Maybe
Like you mentioned, no one really has a reference platform. A reference platform?
no, sorry. I mean, no, a reference point. Sorry,
Oh, a reference point.
maybe.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With some because it's so many new categories, and there's like people haven't seen those yet. So like, there's nothing to compare really to and really write down black and white requirements.
Um, Yeah, I
Yeah.
think what's interesting is that because, to your point, every tool is now becoming the same as every other tool. Data enrichment tools are getting into email sequences and CRMs and things like that. It feels like the appetite for buying a sales op or rev op tool is really there's one tool that you're buying. Like you're not, as you're thinking about buying a tool, you're not thinking, I want one data enrichment tool, I want one CRM tool. You're now thinking about what is that build solution that will get me all of that in a couple months from now as the features ship.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Yeah, no, I think it's more complex than that. I think they still need for different tools. There will be always core tools like CRM, like a marketing automation platform, a quoting tool, etc. And um, it is. I think there's still consolidation happening, but maybe it has also a limit, right? So we can have platforms like Apollo or Zoom Info that offer the end data. They have an engagement part to send out cadences. You can do calling out of those platforms, right? So you have multiple categories within one platform. I think that's the consideration. I
Mm,
mean. But having this consolidation of now a CRM, marketing automation, a quoting tool, and then an ERP, etc., everything in one. HubSpot tries to do that a little bit,
right.
and then, but the thing is, then people getting at some point a bit unsatisfied because if you have so many things, you need to do product development and so many things,
Right.
but people. business is sometimes faster than the product development of an organization that wants to have everything in one platform. Similar with Salesforce, they also try to have everything in one platform, and they cannot keep up with other point solution. Like if I wanna, some companies have a very complex billing system, so they wanna have a very good CPQ that fits their needs, and the product department of HubSpot or Salesforce, they cannot compete building it as quickly compared to an engineering team of, let's say, 100 who only focus on this one product.
Hmm.
Right. So HubSpot obviously has five, six, 700, 800 engineers. But if they have to build marketing automation, CRM, an e-commerce, a calendar solution, a calling solution, an automation platform, and all of that at the same time, like there's going to be sacrifices to make. And so that's why I think some point solution will exist, and we always outcompete the others. But in some things, like more generic stuff, there will be more consideration, like a scheduling solution. Like, I don't see a big future for Calendly, like so many
Hmm.
people, or like a call recording. So many platforms have now call recording, or like just the sequencing tools to schedule emails. Like that's pretty vanilla. So there we see more and more of those consolidation happening.
Yeah, and I mean, like Gong now has their own
Yeah, so many.
CRM and things like that. And although I think Gong CRM looks a little, they've built a CRM that works really well for the product, the call-oriented product that they've built. Um, you also, interestingly, as you talk about the CRM staying, you have a blog post where you talk about saying goodbye to the CRM. You're like, you ditched HubSpot, Elon, I think, ditched Salesforce. And part of the build versus buy debate, it's getting a lot easier to build custom CRM solutions. Is this a trend that you still stand by? Do you see a future where a CRM looks completely different or we have a different system of record?
Yeah, I think it's a one-on-one topic. And currently writing also in a guide, CRM guide for more established companies. So a
Mhm.
bit, let's say 50 million plus revenue. It always depends on what stage you are. If you're a very young company just starting off, maybe like a custom CRM is good. Sometimes even like an Excel spreadsheet is good. Like sometimes the CRM is too glorified. I think if you focus too much on your technology, but you haven't figured out your business model, any CRM is going to be good. Like it's fine. Like just focusing on nailing a business model, build something that customers want to buy. And if internally your operations are messy, you will figure it out. But it's okay. Like you can have the perfect tech setup, but if you go to market, your business strategy, your product or service is not good, yeah, then you will have a problem. So always get the first place right, have a great product, have a great team that can sell and promote the product. Great. Of internal operation, we can follow that, fix at some point. Eventually, a company gets more bigger. That's 20, 30 more revenue million. And then you really need to focus on your internal operations because then you're the hyper growth, you have a proven product, more risk, etc. There you build all your operation. And then coming to the question is of your custom CRM, it's the more complex your business model, the more likely you will have a custom CRM. Like
Mhm.
Amazon, Coca-Cola, Tesla, they build and invest in a custom CRM because they have a very complex business need. So, and they can solve it with a custom CRM. And if they did the calculations for sure, we can have a Salesforce, we can do customization there, we have 10,000 users. Well, it's going to be very expensive just maintaining it. What is the alternative? Okay, we can really build our own platform. We have the smartest engineers on the planet working for us. Let's build something, right? So you have that. And sometimes you also have these mid-sized companies in Germany, often called Mittelstand, which
Mhm.
might be very specific companies that create very specific medical components have also specific need, and they might hire an IT company to develop a custom CRM for them. really not uncommon. That happened since 20 years already, but now it's even easier to have that. So this consideration of a custom CRM I would say from more mid-sized companies to larger enterprise, for them it's more interesting than maybe for a company just starting off.
So in your guide, that's one of, as you think about the guide to CRMs for bigger enterprise companies, one of those pieces is the consideration of whether or not you want to just go ahead and build your own internal CRM system.
Exactly, exactly. Like we aborted the mission ourselves actually. And why we did so, we were so busy just with client work and other stuff. And it was just not worth the effort for us doing it. Because that's again, many smaller companies are in a similar position. If you focus on your business and it's growing, like you cannot do activities like optimizing your business operations that much because if it's working and it's fine and supports somehow the process, oh, fine. You go with it. Even if I don't like the current system as it is, right now I don't have the possibilities to improve it. In other words, other activities are more important than doing it. Would it be different? Then I would focus on improving it. So that's also something that most companies also dealing with. The reality is like sometimes that's what, then again, if you're young and you can grow a lot, you focus on your growth. Eventually, you get in a position where then you can fix the internal problem. But if you fix all the operational stuff way too early, well, then yeah, then you wasted some resources unnecessary. Like most customers we start working with, they at least 10 million revenue, if not much bigger,
Mhm.
because all of these topics, they have a product, it sells well, they can grow, but now they need to really have build the infrastructure to support the future growth. And then RevOps becomes very beneficial.
When you think about that infrastructure to support future growth for these companies that you're mainly working with, over 10 million, what is the primary part of the infrastructure that is broken?
Well, what I just mentioned, like you do everything to grow, you have your product, and well, the consequences and things get neglected, right? There is no clearly defined sales process. There's some knowledge that only sits with some people when they leave the company as a problem, for example. Everyone uses things differently. There was maybe a CRM, but it's horrible. And everyone acknowledge it's a bad situation. That's usually the starting point. Everyone knows it's bad. Everyone knows we need to move, change something. But then people are like, then realize, but change, then I need to change my behavior.
Mm.
Then they swallow this pill, okay. And then we work on building this out. And usually the outcome is people are usually very happy because, oh, wow, this is how you should use a CRM. And so it's really this. They grow. It's a mess because nobody maintained it. And rightly so. It didn't maybe make sense to maintain it. And it got them that far. So something is going well with the team. The team has talent to get, despite this poor infrastructure, to that point. And they have a product or service that sells. So they have the most important pieces there. And they also realize we cannot continue. Now we need to fix it. Yeah, that's usually what happens.
So when you think about infrastructure, it's not just technical implementations, it's like really that change management that you've discussed.
Yeah, it's most of the time change management, especially the more larger the organization, like 95% I spend my time in stakeholder management, aligning, making decisions. And the technical implementation, like that's the relatively easy part. So there you can just get some admins, etc., who do this piece and transformation, but really managing the technical requirements from for the business requirements and transforming that to a technical requirements,
Mm,
training, enabling, finding consensus. Sometimes for one checkbox, you need to have 2 days worth of conversation to implement this checkbox. And
mm.
then because it represents a whole business process behind. And that is where the magic is happening. The system is then end just to facilitate the whole processes.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a really helpful way of encapsulating it. Okay, we have 10 minutes left.
Oh yeah.
I want to get into a little bit of the AI conversation. I know we've touched on that already, but what is one realistic application of AI right now that a lot of RevOps teams are missing? And what is one fad use case that people have been really overhyping AI for?
Yeah, I guess the last one is always this AI SDR topic.
Yeah.
Um, you most likely also get in your inbox emails written by an AI, and they're very obvious, and sometimes people advocate it's personalized, but I don't know. I'm not convinced, and many companies I talk to, they also not convinced. So yeah, I don't think it's the most powerful use case. So, what people can do again is the whole like research topic and enrichment topic. So,
Mhm.
meaning, preparing your account reps or the BDRs and account managers with actionable data. So, if you're selling into enterprises, build an AI agent that can scrap annual reports and get relevant data. Enterprise companies, there's a lot of publicly available data or job boards data. A lot of scrappers can be built and enrich the CRM. Have a good and waterfall enrichment layer where you can get phone numbers, emails, whatever is missing through different data sources, enrich that, put that in the CRM. The moment you get an inbound lead, there should be automation running that get all the relevant account research for that account, the missing data point. If you didn't provide a phone number, get the phone number. All of that should be automated. And then one moment it arrives the BDR, he has all of these data points here that he can do his job perfectly. No single BDR on this planet should create his own list. Like such a wasteful, time-intensive exercise. That's where operations team can shine. Like we know that we probably developed the ICP together with marketing and sales. CS. We define an ICP. We can find with that information. We can build agents to find us relevant people, get them, put them into the CRM. And then, yes, AI can help, like based on this and this key points for this persona. We know this, maybe draft even some messages that the person can review and give him some tagging points. With that, annex, use a call recorder like you are doing right now, for example.
Which is
Get
a
it
mistake.
trans.
Didn't
Sorry,
mean to turn it on.
it's okay. But get all the transcripts from it, create the summary. Maybe if you use a medic methodology, get all the data extracted, make it update your CRM, that it's all there. Like so many companies have this medic or band field in the
Yeah.
CRM and nobody populates it. Like, no, like nobody needs to anymore because you can have a call recorder, the transcript, and it's get automatically populated. So these are the low-hanging fruits that do require some work, but they're not technically complex. The company just need to align. We want this. This makes sense. Let's invest a little bit in it, and voila! Look, this can be set up in 1, 2 months max. You're up and running.
You know what's interesting is that I haven't considered data enrichment in the same bucket as automation, but
Hmm.
inherently data enrichment is an automation process, and you
Oh
save
yeah, for
so
sure.
much time on that. And one of the things that you talk about in your book with automation is this SERV framework. If something should be an automation, right? Scale, ease, risk, value, and expense. Now, a little bit of a plug at ZAMS, we are building plain English automation. So it's one chat interface. We're connected to all of your GTM stack, and you can run super simple automations from chat, right? Like update all my Gong notes, update all my Salesforce using my Gong notes from today, or building, more full stack automations like every morning go through the calendar note, go to the calendar and meeting transcripts from the previous day and automatically fill our CRM based on all of those reps activities. So in theory, I'm setting this up. In theory, in this world where we're using XAMs, the need for a serve framework doesn't exist anymore because everything in theory is easy enough to build. In a world in which anything is easy to build in one prompt, what are the things that you would recommend automating that you currently are not thinking about automating?
That is a good question. I think personally in my day-to-day, like follow-up stuff, right? From a meeting summaries, having a perfect follow-up, next step, etc. And then it basically drafts already an email for me. Like I get the next step and no. But I'm not automating that execution. That's maybe something I would do, but it was just never worth for me to do it personally. And not just for customer, but really for internal communication, because I personally spend most of my time with internal communication. And that may be something, right? So, and uh, yeah, I think, and just like simple flows. If I have this, update that into the CRM, similarly, like you mentioned, but it's just like some of those things you just don't do because there would be so much testing involved to getting it right. Coming back to the topic of build versus buy, right? So
Mhm.
you don't build it because it's just like you will need still a lot of testing to getting it right, etc. But then your time and effort could be spent somewhere else. And then having something more tested to buy it phase, right? So that it makes sense to buy something because, oh wow, now we have this whole new area which
Mm.
we haven't taught before that we actually can also automate, which is great.
Yeah, that build versus buy debate is really interesting. Something else that you mentioned, and this is kind of related, is RevOps new to Europe to a certain extent. I'm assuming that with your European clients, you're also seeing AI automation being adopted a little bit more slowly just because RevOps is newer as well? Or what is the appetite for AI adoption?
Mm, I think with Europe, you always have privacy and risk concerns. So the whole topic of security, so a bit less unrelated to RevOps. So I think the security topic is bigger because people are more aware than AI than RevOps. But adaptation is still lagging behind because of security concerns. You really need to make sure that your security of those AI vendors is in place to implement. And sometimes with some companies, I think one company said it took them 3 years to implement Gong
Oh my
to,
gosh.
bec- to pass security.
Wow.
And so back then there was the whole AI bubble that even started, right? Back
Right.
then it was just meeting recording, and then they just got 3 years later an approval to get Gong, and now they need to have a new approval to get the core Gong Engage. So the
Oh my
sequencing
God.
piece. I
Okay.
know.
Another
This
year.
is welcome to Europe, and a highly successful company. Despite all, like some of those companies, are extremely successful, but it's just like different way of working to some extent. And so the security topic is serious. I keep telling it to my US counterparts and companies trying to enter European market. Focus on your security, focus on your security. Don't enter the market until you have figured out your security bulletproof, and then you can do it.
Why is security so much more of a concern in Europe than in the States?
I think it's a cultural element. It
Mhm.
has to do with privacy. America is also more risk-taking, entrepreneurial, and more open culture, and that always strong business, right? And some of those cultural elements that shaped culture generally, it transformed into politics, into how businesses are run. So it's more politically driven because obviously the companies they would rather like to move like American companies
Mm.
because they know that's good for business and will be more competitive, but they're limited by politics and just the zeitgeist, which is just a little bit more due to many political and cultural factors. So yeah.
Is there a difference in when you're thinking about, a project like helping a client implement that infrastructure? Is there a difference to what type of change management you're doing and what type of infrastructures you're setting up between your American clients versus your European clients?
We did not really operate much with US clients. I think we
Mhm.
only worked with two so far. And funny enough, they were a law firm, and they were so relaxed, considering they were literally lawyers. And it was relatively easy, no complaint. I think we even signed the NDA a few days after started working. And there were like 100 people, so really a bigger agents. So, which again, move fast, break things, right? And you could consider they have very confidential data. Again, it's lawyers. And where European companies, that would be, yeah, very different and slower moving. And yeah, I think that's the extreme case I could present.
All right, well, Harris, we are at time. This was so great. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and for writing the book. Do you have anything that you'd like to say to LinkedIn before we head off?
Well, what could we say to LinkedIn? Well, post something funny. Post the cat memes more. We need more cat memes on LinkedIn.
Cat memes. No more videos, just cat memes.
Exactly, exactly.